Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant, and today I want to tell you the truth about something that took me decades to fully understand. I was surrounded by people, yet emotionally alone. Now, when people hear the word loneliness, they usually imagine somebody isolated, somebody with no family, no career, no purpose, no accomplishments, but that wasn't my life. I was an attorney. I was an officer, a college professor, a federal employee. I was functioning. I was respected. I was dependable. People came to me for advice. People came to me for leadership. People came to me for stability. But privately, there were years of my life where emotionally I was drowning and almost nobody knew it. You know what's dangerous about high functioning depression? People assume you're okay because you're still moving. You still show up to work. You still pay your bills. You still answer the phone. You still go to the gym. You still smile in public. You still handle responsibilities. So nobody realizes you're surviving, not living, just surviving. And at 61 years old, I finally had to confront something painful. A lot of my life decisions, especially relationship decisions, came from my fear of emotional loneliness. Not physical loneliness, emotional loneliness. Now, there's a difference, and many people never learn it. Now, there were periods in my life where I would wake up emotionally exhausted before the day even started. Not physically tired, emotionally tired. I'd sit on the edge of the bed some mornings and think, man, I really have to do all this over again today. But I still got up, still shaved, still put on my clothes, still went to work, still performed, still handled responsibilities. Because that's what functioning people do, especially men, especially military men, especially black men of my generation. You learn very early that the world does not stop because you're hurting. So you compartmentalize. You separate pieces of yourself into emotional little boxes. The grief goes there, the disappointment goes there, the heartbreak goes there, and eventually you become skilled at compartmentalization that you can look completely fine in public while privately just falling apart. That's a dangerous skill because eventually you even stop checking on yourself emotionally. Now, one of the reasons I became so disciplined with the gym was because the gym became therapy for me, folks. The gym gave me structure, it gave me routine, predictability, control. Now, when your emotions feel unstable, routine can keep you alive. And I mean that sincerely. There were days I wasn't lifting weights because I was motivated. I was lifting weights because mentally I needed somewhere to put the pain. Some people drink, some people gamble, some people self-destruct. I buried myself in work, discipline, routine, and achievement. And from the outside, that looks admirable. But sometimes achievement is just organized survival. That's something people don't talk enough about. I want to talk about something about my grieving mother. And people don't understand that when you have death, that is something that's very serious. When my mother passed away, something inside me changed permanently. Now, understand something. You can continue functioning after grief. That does not mean you processed it. And I don't think I fully understand how much emotional pain I had compartmentalizing after losing her. I kept moving, I kept working, I kept surviving, but emotionally part of me just shut down because grief doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes grief looks like numbness. Sometimes grief looks like emotional exhaustion. Sometimes grief looks like losing interest in your own life. Sometimes grief looks like becoming emotionally unavailable without even realizing it. And the scary part, people congratulate you for being strong, not realizing you're disappearing emotionally. And I think one of the hardest realizations of my life was understanding that loneliness is not always about being alone physically. You can sit beside somebody every day and still emotionally feel invisible. That's a different kind of pain because now you're not just lacking companionship, you're lacking emotional connection. And when you spend enough years emotionally unseen, you start questioning your own value, not your usefulness, your value. There's a difference. I was useful to many people, reliable, dependable, supportive, protective, giving, but emotionally known, emotionally understood, emotionally safe, that was much rarer. And eventually I had to confront something painful. A lot of my relationships were built around what I provided, not who I was. Now, at 61 years old, I finally had to admit something to myself. I had repeatedly abandoned myself emotionally in pursuit of companionship. That was hard to admit because when you fear emotional loneliness deeply enough, you start tolerating things you should never tolerate. You ignore red flags. You override discomfort. You minimize incompatibility. You stay longer than you should because the fear of being emotionally alone feels bigger than the danger of being emotionally unhealthy. And that realization humbled me deeply. Not because I hate myself, not because I think I'm weak, not because I finally understood something. Loneliness, folks, can make intelligent people make emotionally dangerous decisions. Even successful people, even disciplined people, even strong people. Now, one of the most painful things in adulthood is realizing how conditional some relationships were. After divorce, some people just disappeared. Some people disappeared physically and then emotionally. Family dynamics change, connections change. People who once felt close no longer felt close. And folks, that hurts, especially when you genuinely loved people. I helped raise nieces and nephews, loved them deeply, cared for them genuinely. And over time, some of those relationships faded in ways that hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed people owed me worship or loyalty forever, but because emotional disappearance leaves questions behind. Questions like, did I matter emotionally or only situationally? That's a painful question. Eventually, I realized I needed help. And that was important because there is a dangerous myth that emotionally struggling means you're weak. No. Sometimes emotionally struggling means you cared too much for too long without emotional safety. So, yes, I sought psychiatric counseling, and I'm glad I did because sometimes you need somebody objective to talk to help you and untangle years of compartmentalized pain, especially high functioning people, because high functioning people often wait until emotional exhaustion becomes unbearable before asking for help. And by then, they've usually been suffering silently for years. One day, folks, I had a realization that changed how I understood my life. I wasn't just afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being emotionally unseen. That's the difference because solitude itself isn't always painful. In fact, peaceful solitude, folks, can be healing. But emotional invisibility, folks, that is corrosive. Feeling like your inner world doesn't matter to the people around you, that slowly drains your soul. And I think many men live this way quietly, still functioning, still providing, still leading, still producing, but emotionally starving. Now, one of the greatest lessons I've learned now is that companionship should never cost you yourself. If you have to abandon your peace, your intuition, your emotional safety, your discernment, your identity, just to avoid loneliness, the price is too high. And I say that calmly now, not bitterly, because I don't hate love. I still believe in love. I still believe in human beings are designed for connection. I still believe companionship matters. But now I understand something I did not fully understand before. Wanting love is human. Abandoning yourself to obtain it is dangerous. Now let's talk about healing. Healing for me has not been dramatic. It's been quieter than that, more reflective, more honest. Healing has looked like just kind of slowing down, paying attention to myself emotionally, being honest about patterns, learning discernment, protecting my peace. I don't care if it's from family, kids, relatives, businesses, jobs. My peace is to be protected at all costs now, and refusing to betray myself emotionally anymore. And perhaps most importantly, learning that emotional honesty is not weakness, it's maturity. So, if you're watching this right now and you've been functioning publicly while suffering privately, I want you to hear me carefully. You are not weak because you're emotionally tired. You are not broken because you long connection. You are not less of a man because loneliness affects you emotionally. Human beings are built for emotional connection. The danger comes when loneliness becomes so powerful that you disappear trying to escape it. I spent years surviving emotionally while still functioning publicly. And eventually, I realized something profound. Being alone is painful sometimes, but becoming emotionally invisible to yourself is far more dangerous. And now I refuse to abandon myself anymore. Not for companionship, not for validation, not for fear, not for loneliness, because peace matters too. Discernment matters, and emotional truth matters too. And so there you have it. I hope this has been helpful. This is the Adjutant, and I'll see you in the next one. I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.